Alright, welcome back to my Bloodborne Blood Level 4 Beginner's Guide. We took out the Celestial Emissary in the previous episode, so now we have access to Abritus. Lots of people consider her to be the most difficult boss in the main game, and her most dangerous attack is her charge attack. However, remember picking up the Executioner attire? We're going to wear that because of the high blunt defenses. Now you wouldn't expect it, but you can actually survive her charge attack, even on BL4. But what is rather counterintuitive is that you should not try to dodge it. Because if you get hit while in an animation, it's a counter, which does way more damage than a normal hit. In other words, if you stand still, you can just tank it. If you dodge and mistime it, you will die. And it's actually really hard to resist dodging. In fact, near the end of the fight I get extremely lucky because I did instinctively dodge, but I got hit pretty much the very first frame after I finished the animation. So when she does the charge attack, make sure that you actually stand still. Now at the start of the fight you cannot damage her yet, but attacking her will increase your beast blood meter. Now what you want to do is to only target her head, as that is her weak point. Dodge her attacks until she slams her head down. Watch out for the double tentacle attack though. That's 2 hitboxes after each other. So make sure that you don't dodge too early. When you stagger her, attack her before her head comes all the way down, because you don't want to do a visceral attack. You want your beast blood meter as high as possible. Once she gets to her second phase, you can get tons of free hits in. In fact, she should almost be dead by now. However, during a second phase, she becomes really dangerous. And there's the charge attack. You see, BL4 and I'm still alive. Again, instinctively you want to dodge, but at least it's not considered a counter if you're out of your dodge animation. Now, one last thing I didn't really make good use of is the transformed version of the saw cleaver. Because in this fight it is actually useful, because of the vertical attacks. It's pretty hard to hit her head with the saw cleaver, but if you transform it, you attack vertically. So even though I didn't really make use of it, it is a more reliable way to damage her head. When she does the lasers, disengage the lock-on and just run. You can also do sideways dodges, but that's a lot less reliable. By the way, I do understand now why people consider Abritus the toughest boss in the main game. But after my first playthrough, I actually didn't. Because back then, for some reason, probably because of a glitch, Abritus just didn't do anything. I got stuck between her tail, and apart from her knocking me back a single time, she basically didn't really do anything. So for me she was the easiest boss in the game. And I was kind of surprised to hear other people having such problems with her. However, I have never been able to replicate that, and what it comes down to, Abritus is pretty damn tough. Alright, let's continue on to Martyr Ligarius. I haven't done that much parrying this playthrough, but when it comes to Ligarius' second phase, it really becomes a lot easier if you parry him. And he is relatively easy to parry. Although, spoiler alert, near the end of the fight I screw up the parry timings multiple times in a row. But when it comes to the first phase, he will pretty much only do 3 types of attacks. One is when he shoots a row of skull projectiles, which you can dodge through. A single skull that explodes, which is a really dangerous move. You need to be pretty far out of the way. And the third attack is where he raises his scythe to make a projectile fall down, which actually has quite a low chance of hitting you. Now, in principle it's better to do transform attacks of course, because it raises your beast blood meter, but the transform animation is quite slow and the boss is pretty fast. So I prefer to do R1 combos, so I can just immediately dodge out of the way if necessary. Alright, when he goes into second phase, get behind him for a backstab and follow up with another R2. And then it's time to parry his attacks. However, the annoying thing is that since you're not going for viscerals, he can recover almost immediately after you do a charged R2. So I have the rune equipped that restores health when you do a visceral. So if you take damage before a parry, it is still worth doing a visceral attack. And with that rune you can pretty much be sure that your life bar will be full afterwards. When he stabs a sword into the ground, immediately target the sword and shoot it. And then immediately dodge out of the way, because there are likely already some projectiles in the air. But destroying the sword will prevent new ones from spawning. So always make sure to immediately destroy the sword when he stabs it into the ground. Now the rest of the fight is me basically fucking up all the parry timings. I'm already not all that great at parrying, but it becomes worse if you panic. So make sure to keep it cool. And we actually get a reward for taking down Ligarius, namely the Crown of Illusions. Not that I care about the Vile Blood Covenant, but it is great for the holy purpose of being fashionable. Okay then, only one more boss in the main game to go, as I will leave the 3 final bosses for the final episode. First we need to run through the Nightmare Frontier, so make sure you have some antidotes equipped for the Poison Lake. And sedatives are also helpful, as there are 2 Winter Lanterns in the area before the boss. Also, always keep moving because of the giants throwing rocks at you. Moreover, there are also 2 hunter NPCs that you probably don't want to mess with. Alright, first of all, Amygdala is a little bit like Darkbeast Spiral, quite tough when you come here early, but pretty easy when you come here with a +10 weapon. Although on BL4 he can kill you in one hit. But there is a quick way to take him down. First, transform the saw cleaver into its extended form. Then run between the boss's legs all the way to the second fog wall. When the boss is facing away from you, that will trigger him to jump up and turn around. Now keep attacking his head until you stagger him. But make sure that you don't accidentally do a visceral attack. Hit his head with transform attacks and then he will go into his second form. He will raise his head, so go for his arms instead. Make sure you do as much damage as you can, and if you don't manage to kill him before he gets ready to attack, run between his legs again to make him jump up and turn around. Roll at the last possible moment to not get crushed, and then you should be able to finish the fight. Alright then, that's it for the main game, so now it's time to go to the DLC.
Cursed Taphims, their children too. And their children forever true.
Okay, as I said back in part 1, as awesome as the DLC is, it is a major step up in difficulty from the main game, especially on BL4. In fact, being on the lowest level, I would say that this is pretty much the hardest Souls content there is. So you may or may not want to include it in your first time doing BL4, but I will show you anyway, because it is still my favorite part of the game. Although for these bosses, more than the other ones, I absolutely cannot guarantee that my approach is necessarily the best approach. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee the opposite. But at the very least, it will get you through it, as you will see. Now, when it comes to the first section of the DLC, as you would expect, I will just run through it in order to get to Ludwig as quickly as possible. Of course, never forget to pick up the medallion at Lawrence, otherwise you cannot proceed after Ludwig. Well, unless you want to face Lawrence second. But I'm saving him for last, because I consider him to be the hardest boss in the entire Soulsborne series. So at the very least, I want to wait until I have farmed the winter lanterns in the area before the Orphan of Cause. And speaking of gem farming, I haven't done that yet in the Nightmare of Menses, so before Ludwig I will go back there so that I will at least do a little bit more damage, about 10 or 15% more. Okay, be careful here. You cannot just run through this part because of the machine guns. So hide behind each obstacle and then after the third one, run past the left side of the Amygdala skull. And don't slow down because there's also a gun to the right.
You're a hunt where you this and beware.
Alright then, we made it to the shortcut, and come to think of it, I completely forgot to even light the lantern here. Now, when you go back, make sure to first go all the way to the right before the bridge, because there we find an item of vital importance, namely the Constable Gloves. And the reason we need those is because most gloves go over the sleeves of the royal dress, but these ones go underneath. And yes, that is important, don't judge me. Okay, this kinda bugs me for some reason. Why can't you climb up here? It looks like you could, but you can't. Instead, they made a much more awkward way from the other side. Anyway, you can't just run towards the ladder, unfortunately, because of the hunter in front of it. So, I don't really have a specific tactic for this one, but let's try to see if I can free up some space so I can safely make it to the ladder. Okay, and there we are, the final checkpoint before what's probably my favorite boss in the Soulsborne series. But as I said, I am first going to farm some gems. And also, come to think of it, my gun is not even close to completely upgraded yet. So down here we can find some more bloodstone chunks. Not that the gun is that important on BL4, but hey, every little bit helps in the end. So, next episode we're going to take down all of the DLC bosses. So, thanks for watching. Please rate, comment, subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell. And stay tuned for the next episode.